The arena fell silent as 16-year-old Marcus stepped into the center ring, his shoulders hunched against the weight of 1,000 stares. Beside him walked Midnight, a massive black horse whose clouded eyes saw nothing of the world around them. Marcus's hand trembled on the lead rope, his face contorting in a sudden violent tic that jerked his head sideways. But Midnight didn't flinch. The blind horse stood perfectly still, waiting. Marcus took a deep breath, his body calming under the horse's patient presence. Then, without a word or touch, they began to move in perfect unison, creating a dance so beautiful that not a single person watching could hold back tears. No one understood how a boy whose body betrayed him and a horse who couldn't see had created something so flawless, so transcendent. But as the video of their performance spread across the internet, reaching millions within days, the question on everyone's mind was, how could two broken beings create something so whole? Before we carry on, please hit the subscribe button to make my day, and let me know where you are watching from in the comments. Marcus Fletcher couldn't remember the last time he'd made it through an entire day of school without someone mimicking his tics. At 16, he had lived with Tourette Syndrome for 8 years, but the cruelty of his classmates never seemed to diminish with time. If anything, high school had amplified the torment to an almost unbearable pitch. This particular Tuesday in late September had been especially brutal. His facial tics had been more pronounced than usual, a series of rapid blinks, followed by a grimace that pulled his mouth into an unnatural shape. The stress of a major history test had only worsened his symptoms, and by lunch period, he was exhausted from fighting his own body. "Hey Spaz, got a twitch you want to share with the class?" Devin Blackwell's voice cut across the cafeteria, loud enough to draw attention but not quite loud enough to attract the intervention of the distracted teachers on lunch duty. Marcus kept his eyes on his untouched sandwich, willing himself to become invisible. He felt the familiar pressure building behind his eyes, the irresistible urge that preceded a tic. "Don't do it, not now," he silently pleaded with his rebellious nervous system. But his body, as usual, refused to cooperate. His head jerked sharply to the right, accompanied by a short, barking sound that echoed in the momentary lull of cafeteria conversation. Devin's table erupted in laughter. "Good one, Fletcher. Do it again." Marcus gathered his untouched lunch, shoved it into his backpack, and fled the cafeteria. He found refuge in the single-occupancy bathroom near the library, where he locked the door and slid down against it until he sat on the cold tile floor. Only then did he allow his tics to express themselves fully, his body jerking and his throat making the involuntary noises he had been suppressing all morning. The release of tension brought a measure of relief, but it was quickly replaced by a familiar wave of despair. He was so tired of fighting, of being the center of unwanted attention, of never knowing when his body would betray him next. His phone buzzed in his pocket. A text from his mother. "Dr. Winters called. She has a new therapy suggestion. We'll talk after school." Marcus sighed. Another therapy. Another treatment. Another false hope. He had been through a parade of medications, behavioral therapies, alternative treatments, and nothing had significantly improved his symptoms. His mother, Ellen Fletcher, never stopped searching for solutions, driven by a relentless optimism that Marcus himself had lost years ago. When the final bell rang at 3:15 a.m., Marcus made his way to the student parking lot where his mother waited in their aging Honda Civic. Ellen Fletcher worked as a nurse at the local hospital, often taking extra shifts to cover Marcus's medical expenses. Despite the financial strain, she greeted him with a warm smile that crinkled the corners of her eyes. "How was school?" she asked, as she always did, though they both knew the answer rarely varied. "Fine," Marcus replied, the standard response that spared her the details she could probably guess anyway. Ellen nodded, accepting the evasion. "Dr. Winters called me during my lunch break. She mentioned a program at Horizon Ranch, about 40 minutes from here. It's an equine therapy center." "Horses?" Marcus turned to look at his mother, momentarily forgetting his miserable day. "You want me to do therapy with horses? Dr. Winters thinks it might help with your tics. Apparently, there have been some promising results with other neurological conditions. The rhythmic movement of riding, the connection with the animal, it can sometimes reduce symptoms." Marcus stared out the window, watching the familiar streets of Cedar Grove pass by. Horses. He had never been close to one in his life. The idea seemed random, disconnected from the medications and cognitive exercises that had constituted his treatment so far. "I don't know anything about horses," he said finally. "You don't need to. That's what the therapists are for. Dr. Winters has already spoken with the program director, and they have an opening this Saturday for an initial assessment. I've rearranged my shift so I can take you." Marcus recognized the hopeful note in his mother's voice, the one that appeared with each new treatment possibility. He didn't have the heart to dampen her enthusiasm, even though his own expectations remained firmly grounded. "Fine," he agreed. "I'll try it." Ellen reached across the console to squeeze his hand, her smile brightening. "That's all I ask. Just give it a chance." The rest of the week dragged by in a blur of classroom humiliations and hallway evasions. Marcus mentioned the upcoming equine therapy to no one, not even to his one friend, Zach, who sat with him at lunch when he wasn't at band practice. The idea felt too strange, too personal to share, especially given the predictable ridicule it would invite from classmates like Devon. Saturday morning dawned clear and cool, the early autumn air carrying the first hints of the changing season. Marcus dressed in jeans and a long-sleeve t-shirt, unsure of what was appropriate for meeting horses, but figuring comfort and coverage were safe bets. His tics had been moderate that morning, a series of facial grimaces and occasional vocal chirps that were annoying but manageable. Ellen drove them out of town, past the sprawling subdivisions that marked the edge of Cedar Grove, and into the rolling countryside that surrounded it. They turned onto a gravel road marked by a wooden sign, Horizon Ranch Equine Therapy Center. The driveway wound through a stand of oak trees, before opening onto a vista of green pastures, white fences, and a cluster of red-painted buildings. As they parked beside a modest office building, Marcus felt the first stirrings of genuine curiosity. The ranch was peaceful in a way that his daily life rarely was, the open spaces and distant tree line offering a sense of possibility that the confined halls of high school never could. A woman emerged from the office, tall and lean with silver-streaked hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. She approached with a direct, no-nonsense stride that suggested efficiency rather than haste. "You must be the Fletchers," she said, extending a weathered hand first to Ellen, then to Marcus. "I'm Diana Hoffman, director of the therapy program here at Horizon. It's nice to meet you," Ellen replied. "This is Marcus." Diana's gaze settled on Marcus with an evaluating but not unkind assessment. "Welcome to Horizon, Marcus. Dr. Winters has told me a bit about your situation. I understand you've been dealing with Tourette's for several years now." Marcus nodded, feeling a tic building, but fighting to suppress it. "Since I was 8. As if sensing his discomfort, Diana continued without dwelling on his condition. "Well, you're in good company here. Many of our clients face various challenges, and our horses have a special way of meeting people exactly where they are. Why don't we take a tour, and I can explain how our program works?" They followed Diana along a gravel path that led past a large indoor arena, several smaller outdoor riding rings, and toward a long stable building. The smells were new to Marcus, a mixture of hay, dust, leather, and the distinctive organic scent of large animals. Surprisingly, he didn't find it unpleasant. "Our program combines traditional therapeutic riding techniques with specialized approaches for various conditions," Diana explained as they walked. "For someone with Tourette's, we focus on the rhythmic aspects of riding, which can help regulate the nervous system, as well as the unique connection that forms between horse and rider." "How exactly does that help with ashras?" "Tics?" Marcus asked, genuinely curious despite his skepticism. "The movement of a horse walking creates a multi-sensory experience that engages the brain and body in specific ways. This can sometimes interrupt the neural patterns that trigger tics. Additionally, the focus required for riding can redirect attention away from the premonitory urges that often precede tics." End quote. They reached the stable, where a row of stall doors lined a wide center aisle. Some horses peered out curiously as they passed, while others continued eating or dozing, uninterested in the visitors. "Most of our therapy horses are retired from other careers, rehabilitated from neglect situations," or donated by owners who could no longer care for them. Diana continued. Each has been carefully selected and trained for this work. They stopped at an empty stall, and Diana gestured down the aisle. For today's assessment, I'd like to introduce you to one of our newer residents. He arrived about 6 months ago and has just completed his initial training period. She led them to a stall at the far end of the barn. Inside stood a large black horse, his coat gleaming like polished obsidian in the filtered light. He turned toward the sound of their approach, and Marcus immediately noticed something different about the animal's eyes. They were cloudy, the dark pupils obscured by a milky film. "This is Midnight," Diana said, her voice softening. "He's a 10-year-old Friesian who came to us after a career as a dressage horse. He developed equine recurrent uveitis a few years ago, which eventually led to complete blindness. His owner couldn't afford the specialized care he needed and surrendered him to a rescue, who contacted us." End quote. Marcus stared at the blind horse, feeling an unexpected connection. Midnight's ears flicked forward, tracking the sounds of the humans outside his stall, compensating for his lack of vision with his other senses. "He's blind," Marcus said, stating the obvious. "How can he be a therapy horse if he can't see?" Diana smiled. "Midnight has adapted remarkably well to his blindness. Horses are prey animals, so their other senses are already highly developed. He navigates by sound, smell, touch, and memory, and he has a special sensitivity to the people around him, perhaps because he relies on them more than a sighted horse would." As if to demonstrate, Midnight stepped forward and extended his muzzle toward the stall door. Diana opened it slightly, allowing the horse to stretch his neck out toward them. "He's smelling you, learning who you are," she explained. "Would you like to touch him?" Marcus hesitated, then slowly extended his hand. Midnight's muzzle was softer than he expected, velvety and warm. The horse snuffled gently at his palm, then pushed his nose more firmly against Marcus's hand in what seemed like a request for more contact. Just as Marcus began to stroke the horse's face, a strong tic seized him. His head jerked violently to the side, and a sharp grunt escaped his throat. He pulled his hand back, embarrassed and expecting the horse to startle or retreat. But Midnight didn't move. The blind horse remained perfectly still, his ears focused forward, apparently unperturbed by the sudden movement and sound. Diana nodded approvingly. "That's one reason why Midnight might be particularly well suited for working with you, Marcus. Because he can't see, he doesn't react visually to unexpected movements. He judges people by their energy, their touch, their voice, not by their tics or involuntary sounds." End quote. For the first time and longer than he could remember, Marcus felt a flicker of hope. The idea of being around someone, even if that someone was a horse, who wouldn't react to his tics, was powerfully appealing. "Would you like to spend some time with him today?" Diana asked. "Nothing complicated, just getting to know each other in one of our round pens." Marcus looked at Midnight, who seemed to be waiting patiently for whatever came next. "Yeah," he said, surprising himself with his eagerness. "I'd like that." Diana showed Marcus how to halter Midnight, guiding his hands through the process while explaining each step clearly. The blind horse stood quietly, responding to voice cues and gentle touches that helped him understand what was being asked of him. "Always approach him speaking softly so he knows where you are," Diana instructed. "And give him verbal cues before touching him. Consistency helps him feel secure." With Midnight haltered, they led him from the stall and down the barn aisle toward a circular enclosure nearby. Marcus was amazed at how the blind horse navigated the space, placing each hoof with careful confidence, his ears constantly moving to track the sounds around him. In the round pen, Diana showed Marcus how to lead Midnight in a circle, using consistent voice commands and gentle pressure on the lead rope. The horse moved with surprising grace despite his inability to see, sensing the perimeter of the enclosure and following Marcus's guidance. "I'm going to step outside and observe for a bit," Diana said after the initial instruction. "Just continue walking him in circles, changing direction occasionally with the commands I showed you. This is about building trust and communication, not performance." Left alone with Midnight, Marcus felt a moment of panic. What if he did something wrong? What if the horse got hurt because of his inexperience? But the black horse seemed content to follow his lead, responding to his voice and the subtle cues of the rope with willing compliance. As they moved together around the pen, Marcus became aware of something unexpected. His tics, which had been moderately active all morning, had quieted. The focused attention required to lead Midnight safely, combined with the rhythmic movement of walking, seemed to settle his nervous system in a way he hadn't experienced before. Time slipped away as they circled the pen. Marcus gradually relaxed, finding a comfortable rhythm with Midnight. Occasionally a tic would surface, his head jerking, or a sound escaping his throat, but the horse never reacted beyond a flicker of an ear. The absence of judgment, of reaction, created a space of acceptance that Marcus had rarely known. When Diana returned 30 minutes later, she found Marcus sitting on a stool in the center of the round pen, Midnight standing quietly beside him, the lead rope slack between them. "You two seem to have connected," she observed with a smile. Marcus looked up, surprised to realize how much time had passed. "He doesn't care about my tics," he said, the significance of this simple fact impossible to overstate. "No, he doesn't," Diana agreed. "Horses live entirely in the present moment. They don't judge. They don't hold grudges. They don't care about differences that humans find so important. They only care about how you treat them and whether they can rise. Trust you." As they led Midnight back to his stall, Diana outlined a therapy program she envisioned for Marcus. "I'd recommend starting with twice-weekly sessions, each about an hour long. We'll begin with groundwork, like what you did today, and gradually progress to mounted exercises if that seems appropriate." "Will IBS always work with Midnight?" Marcus asked, already feeling protective of his connection with the blind horse. "For the groundwork, yes. I think you two are well matched. For riding, we'll need to evaluate as we go. Midnight can be ridden, but because of his blindness, he's not suitable for all riding activities. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it." Back at the office, Ellen completed the necessary paperwork, while Marcus gazed out the window at the pastures where several horses grazed peacefully. The morning had been nothing like he expected. Instead of the clinical, structured therapy sessions he was accustomed to, this had felt natural, almost like making a friend. "What did you think?" Ellen asked as they drove home, her voice carefully neutral, though Marcus could hear the hopeful undertone. Marcus considered the question. His instinct was to downplay his interest, to protect himself from disappointment if this too proved ineffective. But the memory of Midnight's steady presence, the temporary relief from his tics, and the simple pleasure of being accepted without question, was too powerful to dismiss. "I liked it," he admitted. "Midnight is different. He doesn't see my tics, so he doesn't react to them. It was nice to not worry about that for a while." Ellen's smile was bright enough to light the car's interior. "Diana said you two seemed to connect right away. That's wonderful, Marcus." "Don't get too excited, Mom. It's just a horse." But even as he said it, Marcus knew it wasn't true. Midnight wasn't just a horse, and what had happened that morning wasn't just another therapy session. Something had shifted, opened a door he hadn't known existed. For the first time in years, he found himself looking forward to the next appointment with genuine anticipation rather than dutiful resignation. The following Wednesday, Marcus had his first official therapy session at Horizon Ranch. School that day had been typically challenging, with a particularly difficult chemistry lab where his partner had openly requested a switch after Marcus's tics caused him to spill a beaker of harmless but messy solution. By the time Ellen picked him up, his neck ached from the constant tension of trying to suppress his symptoms. "Rough day?" she asked as he slumped into the passenger seat. "The usual," he replied, not wanting to discuss it. "Can we just go to the ranch?" The drive out of town was silent, but as the urban landscape gave way to countryside, Marcus felt the knot in his chest begin to loosen. By the time they turned onto the gravel road leading to Horizon, his tics had already begun to subside, as if his body recognized it was approaching a safe place. Diana met them at the barn, clipboard in hand. "Welcome back, Marcus. Midnight's been doing well this week. One of our volunteers mentioned he seemed to perk up when she used your name while grooming him yesterday." Marcus tried to suppress a pleased smile. "He remembers me?" Horses have excellent memories, especially for people who treat them well. "He's waiting for you in the grooming area." Midnight stood quietly in crosties, secured by two lead ropes that attached to his halter on either side. His ears pricked forward at the sound of their approach, and his nostrils flared as he caught Marcus's scent. "Today we'll start with grooming," Diana explained, showing Marcus to a nearby box filled with brushes. Grooming is more than just cleaning the horse. It's a way to bond, to check for any health issues, and to help both of you relax. She demonstrated the different brushes and their purposes, guiding Marcus through the proper sequence and technique. Midnight stood patiently as Marcus tentatively began brushing his ebony coat, gradually gaining confidence with each stroke. "Use firm, consistent pressure," Diana advised. "Too light feels ticklish to them, like flies landing. There you go, that's perfect." As Marcus worked, moving methodically from Midnight's neck to his shoulders, then along his back and sides, he found himself falling into a rhythm. The repetitive motion was soothing, and he noticed that his tics were significantly reduced, appearing only occasionally and with less intensity than usual. Diana observed quietly, making notes on her clipboard. "You're doing excellently, Marcus. Midnight is very relaxed with you. See how his lower lip is drooping slightly? That's a sign of contentment in horses." The approval warmed Marcus more than he expected. At school, he was accustomed to being the problem student, the one teachers approached with a mixture of concern and exasperation. Being good at something, even something as simple as grooming a horse, was a novel experience. After grooming, Diana led them to a different round pen than they had used on Saturday. This one contained various objects: traffic cones, poles on the ground, a large rubber ball, and a low platform. "Today we're going to work on leading Midnight through an obstacle course," she explained. "Because he's blind, he relies completely on your guidance to navigate safely. This exercise builds trust between you, helps you communicate clearly, and requires focused attention from both of you." She demonstrated how to lead Midnight to the first obstacle, a series of poles laid on the ground that he would need to step over. Clear verbal cues are essential. Tell him step before each pole so he knows to lift his feet higher. Marcus took the lead rope, immediately feeling the weight of responsibility. Midnight's safety depended entirely on his guidance. The thought was both intimidating and strangely empowering. "Walk on," he said, using the command Diana had taught him. Midnight moved forward willingly, matching his pace to Marcus's. As they approached the first pole, Marcus said, "Step," his voice clearer and more confident than he expected. Midnight lifted his front hoof higher, clearing the pole easily. Marcus praised him and continued, guiding the horse through the entire sequence of poles without incident. The next obstacle was the platform, a flat wooden surface raised about 4 inches off the ground. This would require Midnight to step up, stand briefly, then step down, all without being able to see the changes in elevation. "This one's trickier," Diana warned. "You'll need to position him correctly and give very clear cues for the up and down movements." Marcus approached the platform, focusing intently on the task. As he concentrated on guiding Midnight safely, he realized that he hadn't experienced a single tic in several minutes. The complete absorption in the present moment, the responsibility of caring for Midnight, seemed to override the neural pathways that typically triggered his symptoms. With careful guidance and clear commands, Midnight successfully navigated the platform and the remaining obstacles. By the end of the session, both Marcus and the horse were tired but accomplished. "That was excellent work," Diana said, as they led Midnight back to the barn. "You have a natural touch with him, Marcus. Some people take weeks to develop the kind of clear communication you two already have." The praise settled in Marcus's chest like a warm ember. He had connected with Midnight in a way that felt important, meaningful in a way few things in his life did. The blind horse trusted him, responded to him, accepted him without reservation. As they untacked Midnight and returned him to his stall, Diana outlined her observations. "I noticed your tics decreased significantly during focused activities, particularly when you were guiding Midnight through the obstacles. That's consistent with what we often see in therapeutic riding programs for Tourette's. The combination of concentration, rhythmic movement, and the emotional connection with the horse can temporarily interrupt the tic cycle." Marcus nodded, having noticed the same pattern. "It was peaceful, like my brain was too busy with Midnight to remember to tic." Diana smiled. "That's a good way to put it. Now, the effects are usually temporary, especially in the beginning. But with regular sessions, some clients find more lasting relief as their brain essentially rewires certain pathways. So, it's not a cure, Marcus said, the familiar disappointment threatening to surface. No, it's not a cure, Diana agreed frankly. But it can be a valuable management tool, another resource in your toolkit. And beyond the physical symptoms, there are other benefits to consider. Confidence building, stress reduction, the simple joy of connecting with an animal who accepts you exactly as you are. That last point resonated deeply with Marcus. Acceptance without conditions, without awkward glances or poorly disguised impatience, was rare in his experience. The hour he had just spent with Midnight had been more comfortable, more authentic, than any interaction he could remember having with most humans. As they drove home, Ellen glanced at Marcus with barely contained excitement. Diana seemed very pleased with how it went. She mentioned your tics were noticeably reduced during the session. Yeah, Marcus admitted. It helps to focus on something else, especially something important like making sure Midnight doesn't trip or get hurt. Would you like to continue with the program? The question was asked casually, but Marcus knew his mother was holding her breath. So many therapies had been abandoned after initial sessions, discarded as ineffective or too unpleasant to pursue. Yes, he said simply. I want to keep working with Midnight. The relief and joy that washed over Ellen's face made Marcus realize how much his mother had been carrying, how desperately she had been seeking something, anything, that might help him find some peace. Over the next few weeks, Marcus settled into a routine of twice-weekly sessions at Horizon Ranch. Each Wednesday after school and Saturday morning, he worked with Midnight and Diana, gradually building skills and confidence. They progressed from basic grooming and groundwork to more complex exercises, including Liberty work, where Midnight followed Marcus's voice commands without a lead rope, navigating obstacles through trust alone. The effects on Marcus's Tourette symptoms were noticeable, if not miraculous. During his sessions at the ranch, his tics decreased by an estimated 60%, according to Diana's careful documentation. The relief rarely extended far beyond the sessions themselves, but occasionally Marcus would notice a calmer period in the hours immediately following his time with Midnight. As if his nervous system remembered the peaceful state and briefly maintained it. More significant than the physical effects, however, was the change in Marcus's emotional state. For the first time in years, he had something he genuinely looked forward to, something he was good at, something that belonged to him alone and wasn't tainted by the awkwardness and judgment that characterized so much of his life. At school, little changed on the surface. Devin and his friends continued their mockery. Teachers still showed varying degrees of tolerance for his disruptions, and most students maintained their distance. But inside, Marcus was different. He carried the memory of Midnight's acceptance like a talisman, a private knowledge that somewhere, someone, even if that someone was a horse, saw him as whole and worthy exactly as he was. One Saturday in early November, about 6 weeks into the program, Diana proposed a new challenge. I think you're ready to start riding, she said, as Marcus finished grooming Midnight. We'll take it very slowly, but I believe both of you are prepared for this step. Marcus's hands stilled on the brush. Riding? But Midnight is blind. Is that safe? With proper guidance, yes. Midnight was a skilled dressage horse before losing his sight, so he understands riding aids very well. We'll work in a controlled environment, at a walk only for now, with me leading L. Until you're both comfortable. The thought of sitting on Midnight's back, being carried by the powerful animal, was both thrilling and terrifying. What if he had a severe tic while riding? What if he lost his balance, confused Midnight, or somehow caused an accident? Diana seemed to read his concerns. Midnight is extremely steady and responsive, and remember, he's already accustomed to your tics from all your groundwork together. I wouldn't suggest this if I didn't believe you were both ready. Marcus looked at Midnight, who stood quietly in the crosties, ears pivoting occasionally to track the conversation. The bond they had developed over the past weeks felt strong, built on mutual trust and clear communication. If Diana thought them were ready, perhaps they were. Okay, he agreed. Let's try it. Diana helped him prepare Midnight with a saddle and bridle, explaining each piece of equipment and its purpose. The blind horse accepted the tack calmly, clearly familiar with the routine from his previous life as a riding horse. They moved to the indoor arena, a large space with soft footing that provided a controlled environment for this new phase of their work. Diana attached a lunge line to Midnight's bridle, giving her control while still allowing Marcus to learn the basics of guiding the horse. With Diana's help, Marcus mounted, feeling the strange sensation of sitting atop the large animal for the first time. Midnight stood perfectly still during the process, apparently sensing the importance of steadiness for his novice rider. "Sit tall, shoulders back, look forward," Diana instructed, adjusting Marcus's position. "Your legs should hang naturally, heels down. That's it." The height was disorienting at first, the ground seeming very far away. But as Marcus settled into the saddle, he found the position surprisingly comfortable, his body naturally finding its balance point on Midnight's broad back. "I'm going to lead you in a circle at a walk," Diana explained. "Just focus on your balance and getting used to the movement. Midnight knows his job, so you don't need to worry about guiding him yet." At Diana's click and gentle tug on the lunge line, Midnight began walking forward. The movement was unlike anything Marcus had experienced before, a rolling, rhythmic motion that required his body to move in harmony with the horse. After the initial adjustment, he found the rhythm soothing, almost hypnotic in its regularity. As they circled the arena, Marcus became aware of something remarkable. The constant movement, the need to balance and adjust with each step, the sensory input from Midnight's body beneath him, all combined to create a state where his tics virtually disappeared. For minutes at a time, his body was blessedly still, free from the jerks and twitches that usually punctuated his every waking hour. Diana noticed the change. "How are you feeling, Marcus?" "Good," he replied, the simple word inadequate to express the sensation of peace that had settled over him. "Really good. The tics are quiet." Diana nodded, unsurprised. The rhythmic movement of the horse stimulates multiple systems in your body, including the vestibular system that controls balance. This kind of multisensory input can temporarily override the neural patterns that trigger tics. It's one of the reasons equine therapy can be so effective for Tourette's and other neurological conditions. End quote. They continued for 20 minutes, gradually extending the lunge line to give Midnight a larger circle. By the end, Marcus was grinning, his body tired but his mind clearer than it had felt in years. "That was amazing," he said as Diana helped him dismount. His legs felt wobbly on solid ground, but his spirit was soaring. "Can we do it again next time?" "Absolutely," Diana agreed. "You did wonderfully, and Midnight was perfect. I think you two have a bright future together." As they cooled down Midnight and returned him to his stall, Marcus stroked the horse's neck with genuine affection. "Thanks, buddy," he murmured. The blind horse nuzzled his shoulder in response, the gesture so like a hug that Marcus felt his throat tighten with emotion. Over the next few weeks, Marcus's riding skills progressed rapidly. Under Diana's guidance, he learned to guide Midnight using subtle shifts in his weight, gentle pressure from his legs, and clear verbal cues that supplemented the physical aids. The blind horse responded with remarkable sensitivity, seemingly attuned to Marcus's every movement and intention. By mid-December, they had advanced to riding independently in the arena, without Diana on the lunge line. Midnight navigated the space confidently, his memory of the dimensions and his trust in Marcus's guidance allowing them to walk, turn, and eventually trot without hesitation. The effect on Marcus's Tourette symptoms continued to be significant during their sessions. While riding, his tics reduced by nearly 80%, and the calming effect often lasted for several hours afterward. It wasn't a cure, but it provided valuable periods of relief that improved his overall quality of life. More profound was the change in Marcus's sense of self. The confidence gained from successfully guiding a 1,000-pound animal, particularly one that depended entirely on him for safe navigation, began to spill over into other areas of his life. At school, he found himself standing straighter, making eye contact more often, even occasionally speaking up in class, despite the risk of ticsing mid-sentence. Ellen noticed the transformation with quiet joy. One evening in late December, as they drove home from a session at the ranch, she broached a subject that had been on her mind. Diana mentioned that Horizon Ranch hosts a holiday showcase every year, she said, keeping her tone casual. The therapy clients demonstrate the skills they've developed with their horses. It's coming up next weekend. Marcus tensed slightly. Like a performance? With an audience? Yes, but very supportive and informal. Families, friends, donors to the program. Diana thought you and Midnight might want to participate. She said you're doing advanced work for someone who's only been riding a few months. The idea of performing in front of strangers, of deliberately putting himself and his unpredictable body on display, sent a wave of anxiety through Marcus. His tics immediately intensified, his head jerking sharply to the side. I don't think so, he said once the tics subsided. I can barely make it through school without people staring. Why would I volunteer for more of that? Ellen didn't push, but her voice was thoughtful when she replied. I understand your hesitation. But remember, this would be an audience that understands therapeutic riding, that knows many of the participants face various challenges. It might be different from what you're used to at school. Marcus remained silent, unconvinced. The sessions with Midnight were his sanctuary, his private space of acceptance. The thought of sharing that, of risking it becoming tainted by the judgment and stares he faced everywhere else, was deeply unappealing. Just think about it, Ellen said, as they pulled into their driveway. Diana said you could decide as late as the day before, no pressure either way. At his next session, Diana brought up the showcase again. I want to be clear that this is entirely optional, she said, as they tacked up Midnight. Many clients choose not to participate, and that's absolutely fine. I mentioned it because you and Midnight have developed a beautiful partnership, and sometimes sharing that can be a powerful experience. Marcus brushed Midnight's gleaming coat with methodical strokes, considering Diana's words. What would we have to do, if we participated? You'd demonstrate some of the exercises we've been working on, customized to highlight your particular strengths as a team. For you and Midnight. I was thinking about the silent guidance routine we practiced last week, where you directed him through the obstacle course using only seat and leg aids, no verbal commands. Marcus remembered the exercise well. It had been challenging, but deeply satisfying when Midnight responded perfectly to his subtle cues, navigating the course without a single spoken direction. The silent communication between them had felt almost magical, a private language they alone shared. Would people know about my Tourette's? Marcus asked, the crucial question finally emerging. Would they announce it or something? Diana shook her head firmly. Absolutely not. We never identify specific conditions or challenges unless a participant explicitly requests it. The showcase is about celebrating abilities, not labeling differences. The announcer would simply introduce you, and Midnight, mention that he's a blind horse, and perhaps note how long you've been working together. Anything beyond that would be entirely your choice. N. The knot in Marcus's chest loosened slightly. The idea of performing without the weight of his diagnosis being announced was somewhat less daunting. Still, his tics would be visible to anyone watching. There was no hiding the sudden jerks and occasional vocalizations that would inevitably occur, especially under the stress of a public performance. Can I think about it? He asked finally. Of course, Diana assured him. Like I said, it's completely optional. Just let me know by next Wednesday if you decide to participate. During their riding session that day, Marcus found himself considering the showcase more seriously than he had expected. As he and Midnight moved together through their exercises, he realized how much pride he felt in what they had accomplished. The blind horse trusted him implicitly, responding to the subtlest guidance with willing precision. It was a partnership unlike anything Marcus had experienced before, built on mutual dependence and wordless understanding. What would it be like to share that with others? To demonstrate that a boy with Tourette's and a blind horse could create something beautiful together? The thought was both terrifying and strangely compelling. That evening, Marcus broached the subject with Zach during one of their regular video game sessions online. Zach was the only person at school who knew about Marcus's therapy at Horizon Ranch, and even he had only the barest details. So there's this showcase thing at the ranch, Marcus said, trying to sound casual as their characters navigated a digital landscape. Diana thinks Midnight and I should participate. The blind horse, right? Zach asked. his voice coming through Marcus's headset. That sounds pretty cool. Like a recital but with horses. Yeah, I guess. But there would be people watching. A lot of people. Zach was quiet for a moment, understanding the unspoken concern. Your tics, you mean? Yeah. Look, I get why that's scary, but isn't that kind of the whole point of this therapy thing? Learning to deal with the Tourette's? Marcus hadn't thought of it quite that way. I guess. But it's different at the ranch. With Midnight, the tics actually get better. When I'm riding, they almost disappear sometimes. Even more reason to do it then, Zach argued. Show people what you can do, instead of what you can't. Plus, it's not like your Tourette's is some big secret. Everyone at school already knows. That was true enough. There was no hiding his condition from anyone who spent more than a few minutes in his presence. Maybe there was something liberating about choosing to be seen, about performing on his own terms, rather than being an unwilling spectacle. Maybe, Marcus conceded. I'll think about it. The decision crystallized during his Saturday session, unexpectedly triggered by a moment of perfect harmony with Midnight. They were practicing the silent guidance routine, moving through a complex pattern of turns and circles with no verbal cues, when Marcus realized he had gone nearly 30 minutes without a single tic. The complete absorption in the task, the deep connection with Midnight, had temporarily silenced the neurological misfires that usually punctuated his every activity. As they completed the pattern, a sense of possibility unfurled within him. If he could experience this kind of peace, this freedom from his rebellious body, even temporarily, perhaps it was worth sharing. Perhaps it mattered that others might see a different version of him than the twitching, barking boy they thought they knew. I want to do it, he told Diana, as they untacked Midnight. The showcase. I want to participate. Diana's smile was warm, but not surprised, as if she had expected this decision all along. I'm glad to hear that, Marcus. You and Midnight have something special to share. What changed your mind? Marcus stroked Midnight's neck, the horse leaning contentedly into his touch. I guess I realized that hiding doesn't actually protect me. People are going to stare at my tics no matter what I do. At least this way, they might see something else too. That's a powerful realization, Diana said. Softly. And you're right. This gives you the opportunity to be seen on your own terms, to show a side of yourself that most people never get to witness. They spent the remainder of the session outlining a routine for the showcase, building on the silent guidance work they had been practicing. The performance would be simple but elegant, a carefully choreographed pattern of movements through an obstacle course, executed without verbal commands, demonstrating the silent communication between rider and bray. Horse. We'll practice the specific routine on Wednesday and again next Saturday morning before the showcase, Diana explained. The event starts at 2 in the afternoon, but participants should arrive by noon for final preparations. As Marcus prepared to leave, Diana added one more thought. You know, Marcus, what you and Midnight have achieved goes beyond therapeutic benefits or skill development. You formed a genuine partnership based on trust and mutual understanding. That's rare, valuable, and I think people will recognize it when they see you perform. The week leading up to the showcase passed in a blur of school, practice, and increasingly frequent bouts of nervousness. Marcus told no one except Zach about the upcoming performance, not wanting to face questions or, worse, mockery if he ultimately decided to back out. Even his mother, though clearly excited, kept her comments minimal, sensing his fragile resolve. By Saturday morning, Marcus's anxiety had reached a peak. His tics were worse than usual, his body reacting to the stress with increased frequency and intensity of symptoms. As Ellen drove them to Horizon for their final practice before the showcase, Marcus seriously considered calling the whole thing off. We can turn around right now if you want, Ellen said, reading his silence correctly. There's no shame in deciding it's too much. Marcus stared out the window, conflict raging within him. The easy path was clear. Go home, avoid the risk, protect himself from potential embarrassment or pity. But another voice, quieter but increasingly insistent, urged him forward. This voice reminded him of the peace he found with Midnight, the pride in what they had accomplished together, the possibility of being seen, truly seen, beyond his disorder. No, he said finally. I want to do this. I need to do this. Diana was waiting at the barn, her calm presence a balm to Marcus's frayed nerves. Rough morning? She asked, noting his frequent tics. Yeah, Marcus admitted. Can't seem to get them under control. That's to be expected with the added stress. Don't fight them too hard right now. Save your energy for the performance. Once you're on midnight, things often settle down. She was right. As soon as they began their final practice session, the familiar routine of grooming and tacking up midnight provided a centering focus. By the time Marcus mounted, his tics had already diminished noticeably. And once they began moving through their planned routine, the symptoms receded further, his body finding that state of flow where movement became natural, unforced, and temporarily free from the interruptions of Tourette's. The practice went perfectly. Midnight responded to every subtle cue, navigating the obstacle course with graceful precision despite his blindness. The silent communication between them had reached a level where they seemed to anticipate each other's intentions, moving as a single harmonious unit. That was beautiful, Diana said as they finished. Truly remarkable. If you perform like that this afternoon, you'll leave everyone speechless. After cooling down Midnight and returning him to his stall for a rest before the showcase, Marcus helped with the final preparations for the event. The indoor arena had been transformed with decorative elements appropriate to the holiday season. Seating had been arranged along one long side, with space for perhaps 100 spectators. A small sound system was being tested, and volunteers were setting up refreshment tables near the entrance. How many people usually come to these things? Marcus asked, eyeing the rows of chairs with trepidation. Usually around 70 to 80, Diana replied. Families of participants, donors to the program, some local community members. It's a supportive crowd, Marcus. They're here to celebrate everyone's achievements, not to judge. By 1:30, vehicles were beginning to arrive. Marcus, who had changed into the outfit Diana had suggested for the performance, dark jeans and a deep blue button-down shirt that complemented Midnight's coloring, retreated to the relative sanctuary of the Bass barn. There, he focused on preparing Midnight, brushing his already immaculate coat to a high shine, and carefully placing the special tack they would use for the performance. Zach arrived with his parents at 1:45, finding Marcus in Midnight's stall. Dude, this place is awesome, he said by way of greeting. Why didn't you tell me how cool it was? Marcus managed a tight smile, his nerves making it difficult to engage in casual conversation. Thanks for coming. Wouldn't miss it, Zach replied easily. My parents want to meet your horse. Is that okay? Marcus nodded, and Zach waved his parents over. They approached the stall with appropriate caution, clearly unfamiliar with horses, but eager to be supportive. So, this is the famous Midnight, Zach's father said, keeping a respectful distance from the stall door. Zach's told us a lot about him. He's beautiful, Zach's mother added. And it's amazing that he performs so well despite being blind. Midnight's ears flicked toward the new voices, his head turning to track the sounds. Marcus felt a surge of pride in his equine partner, in the quiet dignity with which he carried his disability. He's really special, Marcus agreed, a sharp facial tic punctuating his words. He didn't try to hide or suppress it, noticing with appreciation that neither Zach nor his parents reacted to the involuntary movement. Diana appeared at the barn entrance, clipboard in hand. 10 minutes until we start, Marcus. You're third in the program, after Joey with Buttercup and Maria with Phoenix. The reality of the imminent performance sent a fresh wave of anxiety through Marcus, triggering a series of tics that jerked his head and shoulders. Zach's parents politely averted their eyes, but Zach met his gaze steadily. You've got this, he said simply. We'll be cheering for you guys. As Zach and his parents left to find seats, Diana approached Midnight's stall. How are you feeling? Terrified, Marcus admitted. What if I have a really bad tic while I'm riding? What if I confuse Midnight or mess up the routine? Diana's expression was understanding but firm. First, Midnight knows this routine so well that he could probably perform it if you fell asleep on his back. Second, you've practiced through tics before, and he's never been bothered by them. And third, even if something doesn't go perfectly, that's okay. This isn't a competition, Marcus. It's a celebration of what you two have accomplished. Together. Her words helped, but the anxiety remained a tight knot in Marcus's chest as he led Midnight from his stall and toward the arena. They waited in a small staging area while the first two participants completed their demonstrations. Marcus could hear the announcer's voice, the music that accompanied each performance, and the enthusiastic applause that followed. Then it was their turn. The announcer's voice rang out clearly. Next, we have Marcus Fletcher with Midnight, a 10-year-old Friesian. Midnight came to Horizon Ranch 6 months ago after losing his sight to equine recurrent uveitis. Marcus and Midnight have been working together for 3 months, developing a special bond based on trust and nonverbal communication. Today, they'll demonstrate their silent guidance routine, navigating an obstacle course without verbal commands. Marcus took a deep breath and guided Midnight into the arena. The lights seemed overly bright, the audience a blur of faces that he deliberately avoided looking at directly. He focused instead on Midnight, on the familiar feel of the horse beneath him, the rhythm of his movement, the complete trust the animal placed in his guidance. They reached the center of the arena and paused, as planned, giving the audience a moment to observe them before the routine began. In that pause, a strong tic seized Marcus, jerking his head sharply to the right and eliciting an involuntary grunt. He felt heat rise to his face, embarrassment washing over him at this immediate reminder of his disorder. But Midnight remained perfectly still beneath him, unperturbed by the sudden movement and sound. And from the audience, there was no reaction, no laughter or whispers, just attentive silence as they waited for the performance to begin. Drawing strength from Midnight's steady presence, Marcus gently squeezed with his legs, the silent signal to begin. The black horse moved forward with fluid grace, heading toward the first obstacle, a series of ground poles arranged in a fan pattern. Without a word, using only subtle shifts of weight and gentle leg pressure, Marcus guided Midnight through the pattern, the blind horse lifting his feet precisely to clear each pole. They continued to the next element, a figure-8 pattern around 2 large barrels. Midnight executed the turns perfectly, responding to the lightest touch of Marcus's leg against his side. As they completed the figure, a sense of calm began to settle over Marcus. The focused attention required for the routine, combined with the rhythmic movement of the horse beneath him, gradually quieted his nervous system. His tics, which had been fairly pronounced as they entered the arena, began to subside. The routine progressed through several more elements: a tight slalom between cones, a halt and pivot on the hindquarters, and a section where Midnight sidestepped gracefully along a straight line. Each movement flowed seamlessly into the next, the communication between horse and rider so subtle as to be nearly invisible to observers. Throughout the performance, Marcus experienced only 2 mild tics, brief facial grimaces that didn't interrupt their rhythm or Midnight's focus. The rest of the time, his body was remarkably still, moving in harmony with the horse in a dance of mutual trust and understanding. As they completed the final element, returning to the center of the arena for a halt and salute, Marcus realized that the arena had fallen completely silent. No whispers, no shuffling, not even the small sounds of restless children that had been audible during earlier performances. Every eye was fixed on the boy and his blind horse, the unlikely pair who had moved together as one, transcending their individual challenges to create something of unexpected beauty. Then, as if a spell had been broken, the applause began. It started softly, but quickly swelled, filling the arena with a wave of appreciation that took Marcus by surprise. He looked up for the first time, taking in the audience's reaction. People were smiling, some wiping away tears, all applauding with genuine enthusiasm. Diana appeared at the edge of the arena, her own eyes suspiciously bright. "Beautiful," she mouthed silently, giving him a thumbs up. Marcus leaned forward to pat Midnight's neck, murmuring praise that the horse acknowledged with a flick of his ears. Then, following the protocol for the showcase, he guided Midnight in a final circuit of the arena before exiting to make way for the next participant. In the staging area, Ellen was waiting, her face streaked with tears despite her brilliant smile. "Marcus, that was incredible," she said, her voice thick with emotion. I've never seen anything like it. Before Marcus could respond, Diana joined them, clipboard still in hand but seemingly forgotten. That was beyond what I expected, and my expectations were already high, she said. The connection between you two was palpable. Everyone felt it. Marcus dismounted, his legs slightly shaky from the intensity of the experience. It felt different, he admitted. Better than practice, like we were really in sync. You absolutely were, Diana confirmed. And did you notice? Your tics were minimal during the performance, despite the stress and audience. That's significant progress. Marcus had noticed, though he'd been too focused on the routine to analyze it at the time. Now, in retrospect, he realized how unusual it was for his symptoms to remain so controlled under such pressure. Typically, stress exacerbated his tics, sometimes dramatically. Yet during the performance, after that initial episode when they first entered the arena, his body had cooperated to an unprecedented degree. As they led Midnight back to the barn to untack and cool him down, several people approached to compliment them. Parents of other participants, volunteers, even a few strangers who identified themselves as donors to the program, all expressed admiration for the performance. The way you two communicate without words is remarkable, one woman said. My daughter has autism and struggles with verbal communication. Seeing what you and Midnight have achieved gives me hope for her. That was the most beautiful thing I've seen in years, an elderly man told Marcus, his eyes misty. Reminds me that limitations are often just doorways to different kinds of abilities. Each interaction was brief but meaningful, focused entirely on the performance and the partnership with Midnight rather than on Marcus's Tourette's. Though his tics had returned to their normal frequency now that the performance was over, no one seemed to notice or care. They saw him first and foremost as the boy who had performed so beautifully with a blind horse, not as the boy with Tourette's. The shift in perception was subtle but profound. For perhaps the first time in his life since his diagnosis, Marcus was being defined by what he could do rather than by what he couldn't control. Zach found him as they were finishing with Midnight. Dude, that was insane, he said, genuine awe in his voice. Like, professional level stuff. You didn't tell me you were that good. Marcus smiled, a real smile untainted by self-consciousness. Thanks. It felt good. There are people out there talking about putting videos on social media. Someone recorded the whole thing. Is that okay with you? The question gave Marcus pause. The idea of his performance being shared beyond this controlled environment, potentially seen by classmates or strangers online, was intimidating. But then again, hadn't he just proven to himself that being seen could be positive? That vulnerability could lead to connection rather than rejection? Yeah, he decided. That's okay. The remainder of the showcase passed in a blur of other performances, refreshments, and conversations with various attendees. By the time they were packing up to leave, Marcus was exhausted but filled with a sense of accomplishment unlike anything he had experienced before. As they said goodbye to Midnight, Diana approached with a tall man Marcus didn't recognize. Marcus, this is James Whitaker, one of our major donors and a board member for the ranch. The man extended his hand, which Marcus shook somewhat awkwardly as a facial tic briefly contorted his features. Marcus, your performance today was exceptional, Whitaker said, seemingly unfazed by the tic. Diana has told me about the progress you've made with Midnight, but seeing it firsthand was truly inspiring. Thank you, sir, Marcus replied, unsure what else to say. I have a proposition for you, Whitaker continued. Each year, Horizon Ranch participates in the Regional Therapeutic Riding Showcase in Springfield. It's a non-competitive event where therapy programs from across the state demonstrate their work. We typically send 2 or 3 of our most advanced clients to represent Horizon. Based on what I saw today, I'd like to invite you and Midnight to be one of our representatives this year. Marcus blinked in surprise. Me? But I've only been riding for a few months. It's not about how long you've been riding, Diana explained. It's about the quality of the connection you've developed with your horse and the story you have to tell together. You and Midnight represent exactly what therapeutic riding is all about, overcoming challenges through partnership and trust. The showcase is in April, Whitaker added. That gives you several months to prepare. It's a larger venue with a bigger audience, including media coverage. It's an opportunity to share your story more widely and to inspire others who might benefit from programs like this. The thought of a larger audience, of media coverage, sent a wave of anxiety through Marcus. Yet alongside the fear was a new feeling, a tentative excitement at the possibility of continuing what had begun today, of being seen and valued for his abilities, rather than defined by his disorder. "Can I think about it?" he asked. "Of course," Whitaker said easily. "No pressure, no obligation, just something to consider." On the drive home, Marcus was quieter than usual, processing the events of the day and the unexpected invitation. Alan gave him space, waiting until they were nearly home before asking, "What did you think of today, overall?" Marcus considered the question carefully. "It was scary," he admitted. "But also kind of amazing. The way people looked at me after the performance, it was different. They didn't see the Tourette's first. They saw what Midnight and I could do together." Ellen nodded, understanding the significance of this shift. "I noticed that too. You've worked so hard, Marcus. Not just with the writing, but with everything. Seeing you out there today, so confident and connected with Midnight, it was like glimpsing the person you're becoming beyond the several challenges you face. Mr. Whitaker invited me to represent Horizon at some big showcase in Springfield in April." Ellen's eyebrows rose in surprise. "That's a wonderful opportunity. How do you feel about it?" "Terrified," Marcus said honestly, "but also kind of interested. It would be a much bigger audience, with media and everything." "It's a big step," Ellen agreed. "But based on what I saw today, you're more than capable. And you have months to prepare, to get more comfortable with the idea." They pulled into their driveway, but neither made a move to exit the car immediately, the conversation feeling unfinished. "I never thought I'd want to perform in front of people," Marcus said finally. "To deliberately put myself in a position where people would be watching me. With the Tourette's, I've always tried to be invisible." Ellen reached across to squeeze his hand. "I know, and I would never push you to do something that makes you uncomfortable. But sometimes the things that scare us most are also the things that help us grow the most. Whatever you decide about Springfield, what you did today was brave and beautiful. I'm so proud of you." The following Monday at school, Marcus noticed a subtle shift in the atmosphere. Glances that had once held mockery or discomfort now contained curiosity, and in some cases, a newfound respect. By lunch period, he understood why. Video of his performance with Midnight had indeed been shared on social media and had spread rapidly through the school community. Zach confirmed this when they met at their usual lunch table. "Your video's blowing up," he said without preamble. "Katie Richardson's mom was at the showcase and posted it on Facebook. It's got like 500 shares already, and a bunch of people have put it on Instagram and TikTok too." Marcus felt a complex mix of emotions at this news. On one hand, the thought of his performance, and by extension his Tourette's, being viewed by so many people was deeply uncomfortable. On the other hand, the positive reception suggested that perhaps, finally, he might be seen for more than just his disorder. "What are people saying?" he asked cautiously. "It's all good stuff," Zach assured him. "Like, really good. People are amazed by how you and Midnight communicated without words, how in sync you were. A lot of comments about how beautiful it was, how inspiring. Nobody saying anything negative. I swear." As if to confirm this assessment, Katie Richardson herself approached their table, something that had never happened before. "Hey Marcus," she said, somewhat shyly. "I just wanted to say that my mom showed me the video from the horse showcase. It was really incredible. I didn't know you could ride like that." "Thanks," Marcus replied, a facial tic briefly distorting his features. Katie, to her credit, didn't react to the tic at all. "My little sister has epilepsy," she continued. She loved the video too. She said it made her feel like having a neurological thing doesn't have to stop you from doing amazing stuff. Before Marcus could respond, Katie had moved on to join her friends, leaving him momentarily speechless. The idea that his performance had positively affected someone else with a neurological condition was powerful and unexpected. Throughout the day, similar interactions occurred. Not everyone mentioned the video directly, but there was a palpable shift in how people responded to him. Teachers who had previously seemed uncomfortable with his tics now made eye contact more readily. Students who had once given him a wide berth in the hallways now nodded or even smiled in passing. Perhaps most significantly, Devin Blackwell, who had been his primary tormentor for years, seemed to be avoiding him entirely. No mockery, no imitation of his tics, not even the usual sneers, just a careful distance, as if unsure how to interact with this new version of Marcus, who had suddenly gained a measure of social capital. By the end of the week, the video had spread beyond the local community. A regional news station had picked it up for a human interest segment, and several therapeutic riding organizations had shared it on their platforms. Marcus received an email from Diana, informing him that Horizon Ranch had seen a significant uptick in inquiries about their program, directly attributable to the visibility generated by his performance. The following Saturday, when Marcus arrived for his regular session, Diana greeted him with unexpected news. "Your video's gone viral," she said, her tone both pleased and slightly awed. "It's been viewed over 1 million times across various platforms. We've had inquiries from national media, and several therapeutic riding associations have asked if you'd be willing to be featured in their promotional materials." Marcus stared at her, struggling to process this information. 1 million times? But it's just me and Midnight doing an obstacle course. Diana smiled. "It's much more than that, and I think you know it. The visual of a boy with visible tics finding such harmony and control while guiding a blind horse. The silent communication between you, the obvious trust and partnership, it speaks to people on a deep level. It's about overcoming limitations, finding connection despite differences. That's a universal story." That resonates widely. As they prepared Midnight for their session, Diana broached the subject of the Springfield showcase again. "James Whitaker called me yesterday. He's more eager than ever to have you represent Horizon in April, given the response to your performance. But he also wants me to be clear that there's no pressure. This kind of visibility can be overwhelming, and your well-being comes first." Marcus brushed Midnight's coat methodically, finding comfort in the familiar routine. The past week had been a whirlwind of unexpected attention and shifting social dynamics. Part of him longed to retreat, to return to the relative anonymity of being just another kid with a neurological disorder to be pitied or mocked. But another part, growing stronger by the day, recognized the unique opportunity before him. "I want to do it," he said finally. The Springfield showcase, and the other stuff too, the promotional materials for the therapeutic riding associations. If it helps other people find programs like this, people like me who need it, then it's worth it. Diana's smile was warm with approval. "I think that's a wonderful decision, Marcus. Your story has the power to help a lot of people. But remember, you can change your mind at any time. None of this is an obligation." As they led Midnight to the indoor arena for their session, Marcus felt a curious sense of peace settle over him. The past few months had transformed his life in ways he could never have anticipated when he first met the blind horse. Midnight had given him not just temporary relief from his physical symptoms, but something far more valuable, a new narrative about who he was and what he was capable of. The viral video and subsequent media attention accelerated changes that had already begun within Marcus and in his relationship with the world around him. As December gave way to January, he found himself navigating a new reality where his Tourette's, while still very much present, no longer defined him in the eyes of others, or, increasingly, in his own mind. School became markedly more tolerable. The shift in how his classmates perceived and treated him held steady, evolving from the initial novelty of his minor celebrity status into a more genuine acceptance. Devin and his friends eventually resumed some of their mockery, but it lacked the former viciousness and was now often shut down by other students who had come to see Marcus differently. The therapeutic riding sessions with Midnight continued twice weekly, with an increasing focus on preparing for the Springfield showcase in April. Diana developed a more complex routine that would highlight both Marcus's growing riding skills and the special communication he had developed with Midnight. The new program incorporated elements of dressage, Midnight's original training before losing his sight, with the obstacle work they had already mastered. In February, a crew from a national morning show visited Horizon Ranch to film a segment about therapeutic riding, featuring Marcus and Midnight as their primary example. The resulting piece, which aired to millions of viewers, presented their story with sensitivity and depth, emphasizing the mutual benefits of the partnership between a boy with Tourette's and a blind horse. The exposure led to a flood of messages from viewers affected by the segment. Parents of children with Tourette's or other neurological conditions reached out to thank Marcus for providing visible proof that such diagnoses need not limit potential. Adults with disabilities expressed how seeing his performance had inspired them to pursue activities they had previously considered inaccessible. Even medical professionals contacted Horizon Ranch, interested in the therapeutic benefits demonstrated so clearly in Marcus's case. One message in particular stood out. It came from a 13-year-old boy in California who had been diagnosed with Tourette's 2 years earlier and had since withdrawn from most social activities due to embarrassment about his tics. After seeing Marcus's segment on the morning show, he had asked his parents to find a therapeutic riding program in their area. "Watching you ride made me think maybe I could do something cool too," he wrote. "Maybe people could see me, and not just my tics, like they see you." That letter affected Marcus deeply, crystallizing his understanding of the impact his visibility could have on others facing similar challenges. He began to see his decision to perform publicly, not as an act of personal bravery, but as a form of service, a way to expand possibilities for those who had been told, explicitly or implicitly, that their differences made certain achievements impossible. As the April showcase approached, Marcus's preparation intensified. Beyond the technical aspects of the performance, Diana worked with him on managing the increased pressure of a larger venue with media presence. They practiced with artificial distractions, simulating camera flashes, audience noises, and other potential disruptions. Midnight, as always, remained steadfast, his trust in Marcus unwavering regardless of the environment. "The key is to find your center with Midnight before you begin," Diana advised during one of these sessions. "Take those few moments when you first enter the arena to reconnect with him, to remember that regardless of who's watching or what's happening around you, the core of the performance is just the two of you, communicating as you bow. Always do." By early April, Marcus and Midnight were more than ready technically. The question that remained was whether Marcus could manage the psychological pressure of performing on such a significant stage. The Regional Therapeutic Riding Showcase would feature participants from dozens of programs across the state, with an expected audience of over 1,000 people plus media coverage. The week before the event, Marcus experienced a resurgence of anxiety that manifested in increased severity of his tics. The symptoms were bad enough that Diana considered suggesting they withdraw from the showcase, prioritizing Marcus's well-being over the performance opportunity. "We can always participate next year," she told him gently, after a particularly difficult session where his tics had been almost constant. "There's no shame in recognizing when something is too much." Marcus sat beside Midnight's stall, the blind horse's muzzle resting comfortingly against his shoulder. "It's not too much," he insisted, though his body betrayed him with another sharp head jerk as he spoke. "I'm just scared, but I still want to do it." "What's the worst that could happen?" Diana asked, taking a seat beside him. "Let's name the fear specifically." Marcus considered this. "I could have really bad tics during the performance. I could mess up the routine. People might laugh or feel sorry for me instead of seeing what Midnight and I can do together." Diana nodded. "Those are legitimate concerns. But let's think about what we know from experience. How does riding Midnight typically affect your tics?" "They get better. Sometimes they almost disappear." "Exactly. Even under the stress of your first showcase here at Horizon, your symptoms decreased significantly once you were actually performing. And if some tics do occur during the Springfield performance, do you think that invalidates what you and Midnight have achieved?" Marcus shook his head slowly. "No. I guess it would actually make the point stronger in some ways. That despite the Tourette's, we can still create something beautiful together." "I think so too," Diana agreed. "As for people's reactions, I can't promise that no one will respond negatively. But based on what we've seen so far, the vast majority of people who witness your performance with Midnight are moved and inspired, not pitying or mocking." The conversation helped settle Marcus's nerves somewhat, but the anxiety persisted in the days leading up to the showcase. The night before they were scheduled to travel to Springfield, he barely slept, his mind cycling through worst-case scenarios despite his rational attempts to dismiss them. The morning of the showcase dawned clear and cool, a perfect spring day. Marcus, Ellen, Diana, and 2 other participants from Horizon Ranch made the 2-hour drive to Springfield, where a horse trailer had already delivered Midnight and the other therapy horses the previous day. The showcase venue was intimidating. A large equestrian center with multiple arenas, stabling for hundreds of horses, and grandstand seating surrounding the main performance space. When they arrived, the facility was already bustling with activity, participants and horses from various programs preparing for their demonstrations. Midnight was waiting in a temporary stall, his familiar presence a grounding force amid the unfamiliar surroundings. He nickered softly when he heard Marcus's voice, extending his muzzle in greeting. The simple interaction helped calm Marcus's racing heart, reminding him of the core relationship that had brought him to this moment. As they prepared for their performance, scheduled for DAC, early afternoon, Marcus focused on the familiar routines of grooming and tacking up Midnight. These actions, performed hundreds of times over the past months, had become almost meditative, a way to center himself and connect with the horse who had changed his life so profoundly. Diana came to check on them an hour before their scheduled time. "How are you feeling?" she asked, her calm presence reassuring. "Nervous," Marcus admitted, "but okay. Better when I'm with Midnight." "That's good. Use that connection. Remember, when you're